Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Have any of you tried this? Reese's hot chocolate. Never come across it before. It's sold in a shop that's local to me, just randomly, and it's not the kind of thing I would ever normally pick up or indulge in. I do have a bit of a sweet tooth, but I'm aware of it, so I know that sugar wreaks havoc on my skin and my constitution, so although I allow myself to indulge here and there because this is life, we've got to enjoy ourselves. This is the kind of thing I would usually turn my nose up at and think, oh, too much. Well, I tried it last night. It is so divine. It is like friendship in a cup. The warm embrace of friendship. It's not overwhelmingly sugary. It's got a little malty kick to it. It's supposed to be the taste of chocolate with peanut butter. You know, like a Reese's piece. And because I'm not sure how much sugar is in it, and I always get sort of horrified when I see things have, 20, 25 teaspoons full of sugar in them. And I didn't know how many this had, so I drank half of it last night as a little treat, as a pudding really. And then this morning I woke up and I went to the fridge where I'd stored it, and it was cold, and it was like an ice cold chocolate peanutty treat. So divine. It's absolutely delicious. So I have to be very careful. It's the kind of thing, a few years ago I would have been out every night to the shop, popping in to get my fix of this, but I'm going to limit myself perhaps once a week as a little occasional treat. I think that's the secret, isn't it? But so good. So I wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to share with you my dismay at the news that the actress Julie Goodyear has been diagnosed with dementia. She is the actress that played Bet in Coronation Street, so those of you at home and abroad, because it has a big following abroad as well. She was in it for a long time, from the 60s. Well, you've heard me talk about her on many occasions, because I lifted her catchphrase, get it, got it, good. I lifted that from her. And I'm a great fan of her autobiography, actually, Just Julie. For any fan of the show, I would recommend it to you. And it just broke my heart yesterday when I heard that she's been diagnosed with the sort of early stages of dementia, but that it will possibly progress quite speedily. And she's 81 years old, and she's been out of the public eye for quite a while, but she's one of those people that grabbed me by the heart. I watch old episodes of Coronation Street from the 70s, the 60s on YouTube. I find them quite comforting and an escape from the modern world. And she's just one of those characters that you will see me reference, and you will get glimpses of her in the broadcast. And for those of you that don't know her or the character she played, it will go over your head and it won't mean anything. But there are lots of flashes of Julie in River. So I wanted to just, it's not an obituary, she hasn't passed, but it's so very difficult, the issue of dementia, and it's close to my heart. A few of you do ask how my great auntie is doing, because I would mention her several months ago. I used to mention her quite a lot, because I spend a lot of time visiting her and seeing her. She lives with my parents. And just to keep you in the loop, what we'd been expecting for a long time came to pass in the fact that she was recently confirmed diagnosed with vascular dementia. And that, as I'm sure many of you will know, is very difficult because you have the person and yet you don't. And fortunately, she still knows who we are. She can still tell a few stories here and there, but she's become very confused, and she has a sort of goldfish memory, so you can have the same conversation 5 times in 20 minutes. And I'm sure many of you know the score and what it's like. It's just so bittersweet to have her, but not to have her. So it affects so many people, this dementia. And you might recall me telling you that she is of a similar age to the late Elizabeth, a couple of years younger, I think, but a similar age to that. She remembers the coronation, obviously, growing up in London with King George on the throne, and she reminds me so much of the late Queen. And in looks, she has a very natural regality She's always been a big part of my family's life, which is why she's been living with my parents, but very much channels the royal spirit and has an air of authority, but that twinkle in her eye that's still there. You know, you can still have a good laugh with her and crack the joke, and she gets it. She has moments of being rather lucid, but it's fading. So I'm sorry to start on a slightly bittersweet note, but I also know that lots of you going through this adventure that we call life stumble across these things on the way as well, and I know that you appreciate me sharing bits and bobs from my journey as well, because it's what kind of binds us all together, isn't it, really? It's a scary place, this thing called life. Yes, it's full of joy, but it's damn cruel as well. It's damn cruel. And I think it's important that we recognise that at times. And it is one of the reasons, I shall segue, it is one of the reasons, my dear, why royalty brings comfort. And it absolutely does. Even if it is born of imagination. What is the world if it is not born of imagination? But it does bring comfort to millions and squillions of us. And that is why it's always a joy to see the likes of the Princess of Wales popping up, as she did yesterday, when she joined local and national rugby stars at Maidenhead Rugby Club to discuss the new Shaping Us campaign. She spoke to the players about their childhood experiences and the role their communities played in supporting children and parents. And what I loved is that she was wearing this wonderful updo. Some of the press likened her to Sporty Spice. Well, that's a bit of a stretch, but yes, she was wearing what we call the Croydon facelift, and I love it. I wish she would do more updos, especially during the daytime. It would be wonderful, because it has a youthening appearance and it just keeps it out the way. You know I grumble about this a lot, but this is my playground. If I want to grumble, I will, my dears. And she could do so many elaborate things with updos instead of having them falling. We know she's got lovely hair, but for example, when she was meeting up with the kiddies, was it yesterday, always pulling it back off of her face, and it gives anybody the appearance of being slightly vain when they're always getting hair out of their face, whether or not they are. And it's just not really necessary. It's not really practical. It's what I really appreciated about the late Elizabeth, the late Margaret Rose. Well, I suppose you can take your pick, can't you, from the shampoo and set brigade. Rain Spencer, her coiffure was marvellous, wasn't it? Magnificent. Rain Spencer, wow. That was a sort of peacock of a Barnet. Absolutely splendid, even though she wasn't royal. But come on now, fix the hair, can have such fun with different styles, something different. And I also thought that her smoky eye on this rugby jaunt was a little bit over the top for day wear, but I do appreciate that she looked absolutely gorgeous, absolutely heavenly. So did some of the rugby players, actually. Marvellous. I just adore the rugby physique, isn't it wonderful? For the legs, for the buttocks. Yes, yes, my dear. And she got stuck in. And she was presented with a special memento, a pair of earrings designed in memory of Isabel Phipps, who took her life when she was just 17 years old in April. And this gift was from her mother, of this rugby player. And Catherine promised her that she will wear the earrings, and I have no doubt that you will see that popping up in headlines in the future when she wears them. They are called the Izzy Star, and £5 from every purchase of these earrings is going to a mental health charity. And both Catherine and William have been offering to help out by replacing food and other donated items that were stolen from the St Thomas Church in Swansea, Wales over the weekend. We saw photographs of them visiting the church just last year, and Kensington Palace contacted Reverend Stephen Bunting after this theft to offer their love and support. How hideous that anyone would steal such items. I'm sure if they had asked the church for help, they would have been given help if they were in such a desperate situation, but it is absolutely reprehensible to be stealing in that manner. But luckily, the Prince and Princess of Wales were on hand to help out. The Prince of Wales was also looking dashing and in high spirits today at the Oak Cancer Centre. He opened this new cancer treatment centre in Sutton and spoke with patients who are receiving care. And it was William that launched the appeal for this much-needed facility in 2015 in his capacity as president of the Royal Marsden NHS Foundation Trust. So it's a real passion project for the Prince. This is a £50 million state-of-the-art research and treatment facility, and it was William who laid the foundation stone 3 years ago. He took a tour of the centre and delivered a speech, which was very well received. And this centre will be a milestone in the future of early diagnosis. The general whispering seems to suggest that Harry performed better at trial yesterday, on his second day, and his last day appearing in court. Not quite so twitchy. Sounds like he'd had a bit of a talking to by his team and advice on how to behave, and I've heard that he did endear himself to many in court, as well as frustrate a little with some of his answers. But he appears to have performed slightly better. It's still very possible that he will triumph. And if he can prove unlawful gathering, then as much as I criticise much of his fantasias and his phantasmagorical leanings, if he proves unlawful gathering, then I will be glad of it. And I will raise a glass to him and say, well, cheers. You were done wrong. You were done very wrong, and you're being compensated for it. I would have no problem with that. But, I'm also glad that it has shone a light on how vague and loose his claims are, because there's no doubt about that. So then we can all be happy. We can all be happy. However, most of the press coverage, despite his better performance, was unfavourable. And that includes a lot of the publications that would normally or historically have been in favour of the Harkles and not quite so disparaging. Isn't it interesting? Do you remember there was a discussion panel in 2019 that the Duchess of Sussex appeared on? And at the time she said that she does not look at Twitter, but she does read The Economist. She said, oh no, she's a smart one, remember. She's a smart one. She's a smart cookie. I do read The Economist. And that was because the panel was being moderated at the time by the senior editor at The Economist, Anne McElvoy. So she was probably just saying it to impress her. But anyway, she insists she reads The Economist well. Even The Economist joined in with some disparagements. There was quite a large article, but to quote, to add Prince Harry complaining on film, streaming now on Netflix, and Prince Harry complaining in print, £28 from all good bookshops, now Britain can enjoy Prince Harry complaining in court. And the question that many people have been asking all over the world is, how is it not possible that the Sussexes don't seem to get that selling their family secrets and the secrets of all their various contacts in books and tomes and teleprograms, anything you can think of, my dear. That's no different from journalists doing the same, really, is it, when you whittle it down to the bare bones? How different is it? Going into various details, even when it comes down to our future king, intimating the status of his junk and its cut or uncut status. Talk about too much information for a future monarch to let us know what's been going on there with the family jewels. Seems a little bit much. No one else is supposed to invade his privacy, but he doesn't mind invading it, and everybody else is along with him. Dragging Sasha Walpole, not just through the mud physically in the field, but dragging her name through the mud. Was it Sasha Walpole or Small Pole, whatever it was, my dear. She was riding it. And, Harry isn't the only nickname for the name Henry. The other nickname could be Hank. And instead of hacking, it is hanking that he has been up to within the royal family, like he is some sort of mole of the family. There he goes, hanking again. Hanky, hanky, hanky business. Harry spills the beans, but we later find that they ain't beans. He tells us that they're beans. He spills the beans on Oprah, on Netflix, all over the shop. And then we come to find they were never beans. They were lentils or rice and peas or anything at all. Anything at all, but not beans. I saw Kevin Sullivan on Talk TV. He's a very established presenter and journalist, and he worked at the Mirror for many years. And he says that Harry's been creating stories in his mind and then thinks that they're true. Well, we've been saying this for a very long time, haven't we, my dears? And he says that Harry, he depicts these sort of scenes of reporters in a sort of newsroom huddle and in his mind, he thinks, and he's got it into him, that he thinks that they sit around and have a checklist of how we are going to invent this character of the Prince Harry, the thicko prince, things like the chaotic love life, the underage drinker, the drug taker, as if they are specifically and purposefully creating a character. And he says that this is absolutely not true, with all his years and decades of experience. And he asked another former colleague that was there and used to work in newsrooms, and he said that this just doesn't happen. It's a sort of pantomime image that Harry has got in his mind of journalists and the newsroom. In a way, he's doing to them what he claims that they do to him, creating this sort of fictitious impression of what really goes on. And a lot has been made about one of the headlines, which was, "Hooray, Harry's dumped," because apparently this caused Harry a great deal of pain to see it. And of course we can all understand that if he was dumped by Chelsea Davy, as she finished things as we hear, yes, he was heartbroken. Of course it would have been rather hideous for him. But he took umbrage at this newspaper title, "Hooray, Harry's dumped." And he misconstrued it, because he says in his complaint that he thought that meant that there was a rejoicing, as in, "Hooray, Harry's dumped, Harry's dumped." Now, for people abroad, you won't know, perhaps, that "Hooray, Henry" is a British phrase, a famous British saying. A "Hooray, Henry" is a pejorative term to denote upper-class twits, public schoolboys that have a sort of oikish side, if you think of the Bullingdon Club, for example. At Eton, it's a "Hooray, Henry." It's a very well-known phrase, and he will have known what it meant, but apparently it went over his head. And if it was "Hooray, Harry's been dumped," then there would have been a comma in the title, as in "Hooray, Harry's dumped, Harry's been dumped." But it was actually "Hooray, Harry has been dumped." Do you see? And he said that for me, as a subject or victim of this, the term is hurtful. Hurtful and mean that such a private moment was turned into a bit of a laugh. Well, as I say, one can understand that it would be a bit like salt in the wound to read about your private life. But first of all, your royals, don't bother reading the tabloid trash. You know, do as your father does and don't bother reading all that kind of stuff, because they're gonna write about you anyway, no matter how much time you complain, as you are finding out. But secondly, if you are going to complain, get the connotation right, the context right. And don't suggest that the hooray was in jubilation of you being dumped. They were reporting the dumping, they weren't jubilating over it. Not in the context of this article anyway. So who knows if the court has been convinced of any specific incidences. What we do know is that court is not the place to go with a moral case, because this seems to be a moral crusade. He wants to hold it up as an example of what went on throughout that era, but by being very vague about it. Let's see if that will be enough for him. But you can't put tabloid culture as a whole in the dock. This is what he seems to want to do with this grand moment of his life. To put the entire tabloid culture of many decades ago in the dock at once for their grand comeuppance. Well, we shall see. As part of Childhood Day celebrations, the Duchess of Edinburgh visited a South London primary school to celebrate pupils' fundraising efforts. The pupils took part in the Childhood Day Mile, and Sophie completed the walking race and met with volunteers to learn about the NSPCC's Speak Out, Stay Safe programme. She wore flared trousers with checks and a silk crepe de chine top with a cream blazer and clogged sandals in tan, together with a Habsburg straw bag. And I thought this was very sweet because so many people took the time to write to their Majesties and congratulate them on their coronation. And the Kingswood Nursery School wrote to them, and they got a rather nice reply in the post this morning, and they posted it to social media. They received a card with the Charles and Camilla emblem or cipher affair, with illustrations taken from the invitation, and a letter from the head of royal correspondence. Isn't that lovely, with a photograph of their Majesties? I thought that was very nice. And I also wanted to address, because I don't think I did at the time, all the silly rumours about William taking some sort of umbrage with Camilla, our Queen, during those proceedings, because he didn't mention her name during his speech. But I please reassure you that there is no beef between William and Camilla, and you can actually see one of many moments from that day of the coronation concert William gesturing to the Queen. I think he was next to her at the time. And he's pointing out her grandchildren and their chums, who are all in the front row below, and you can see there the reaction. But everything is perfectly nice and cosy there. Our hard-working and very sweet-natured Duke of Kent was in Dorset at the Tank Museum, and he was welcomed as he opened a new Royal Armoured Corps memorial, and he unveiled a plaque to commemorate the museum's centenary. The memorial room commemorates the sacrifice of almost 13,000 Royal Armoured Corps soldiers who have died in service since the Corps was founded in 1939. His Royal Highness is patron of the Tank Museum and the RAC Memorial Trust, and he was reunited with the Centurion tank, a vehicle that he served in during his 20-year service in the Royal Scots Greys. Well, thank you for joining me for a nice chat today, my dears, and I'm going to try and restrain myself from going out and getting another one of these. Do tell me in the comments, won't you, if you've ever had one of these by Hershey's. Reese's Hot Chocolate. Oh, it makes my pants ping. It truly does. Well, I say cheers to you, and I say channel the royal spirit, and stay fruity and always on royal duty. Get those comments coming in. My tip jar is in the description box, and I will catch up with you next time. Take care, and toodaloo, my dears. Ta-ra!
Get it? Got it? Good. Carry on sopping.